Hey friends, the election results are in New York City. Residents have made history in electing the first openly socialist and Islamic mayor. What's going to happen there? We're going to talk about how everyone loses in this scenario. We're going to break down the election results. We're going to see about who was the reason that this man was elected into office, what's going on there, what's happening with the massive shift with our financial institutions and firms leaving New York City, and why is all this happening and where is this headed? And we're going to talk about that because the next midterm elections are going to be crucial, and you won't want to miss this podcast.
Hey, welcome to the Ron Johnson Discipleship Podcast.
As we record at this very moment, we have officially transitioned from a wonderful fall season into the throes of winter.
Was that transition? It's kind of more like a whiplash.
Yeah. If you hear during this podcast moaning and groaning from my partner in crime here, it's because he shoveled that wet lake effect snow. You did it right before you got here, huh?
Yeah, and I'm sure my back will be hurting tonight. But then as I got here, I was meeting with a couple of executive team members. They're talking. I'm looking out the window. I'm not listening to anything they're saying because I'm like, all that work I just put into shoveling, I should have waited till this afternoon.
The good news is we don't have the 50-mile-an-hour winds creating drifts. So this is nice and wet. It's terrible to move, but it's nice and wet. And that's why we have our Christmas tree right here, just so you guys know that we are officially leaning into this moment. But this office feels like we're actually recording outside. It is freezing in here.
Yeah, we got to check the insulation. What's going on?
Come on, we got to figure out where's the heat. Where's the heat in this place? All right. Anyway, what a great weekend of ministry that we had. Sunday was a record-setting Sunday in terms of attendance. We have a record-setting Sunday in terms of us doing our part to populate the world and America in particular. 32 babies dedicated to Jesus by amazing parents. And then we capped off the night with a TP USA, Turning Point USA, Christ and Culture event that we've been so excited about, featuring Martin Cedra, a pastor currently from Australia, a religious refugee from Egypt, someone who knows the pain of Islam up close and personal. And it was amazing. And our people turned out. It was incredible. We must have had 800 plus people there last night. I was shocked. I didn't know what to expect. Of course, we had, the winter storm warnings in effect. It was not the most ideal conditions weather-wise, but I'll tell you what, people are hungry, and I was pretty fired up last night. I was curious, out of all that was shared, and so there was so much content. In fact, let me just pause right here and say you can access that content because everything was recorded and is on our YouTube channel, and that link will be on the description portion of this podcast, so you can go and find that and track it down. But like I said, so much amazing content. Pastor Martin just is like a machine gun. The guy knows what he's talking about and just laid out truth bombs one after the next. But what really spoke to you? What stuck with you?
I think the facts he shared about Islam, I've heard before, I've read before. I think what's different is speaking from a young person who was raised in that culture, who faced the reality of these theoretical or theological ideas of Islam and how it impacted him, his family, what it really means. I think we often talk about Islam from an academic sense.
Right.
And he laid out the emotions, the feelings, the facts behind it, and the implication of that. And he's able to speak boldly because he's of Middle Eastern descent, and also because he lived through it. So I thought that was probably the most impactful part for me.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I get tired of the academic ivory tower analyses of world religions. If you really want to hear the fruit, of what's going on, the workings out of a worldview. Talk to the people who have to live under it, like real life. What's your family life like? What's your liberties like? What's food like? What's your economy like? I mean, these are all important things to talk about, and so I think that gives him authority, moral authority, because he's not speaking from hypotheticals. He's speaking from real life. And I guess, we've shared before, courage is something that is more caught than taught. And his story about his father, after receiving the threat that we're going to come and kill you, kill your family, kill your sons, kill your children, whatever, that he pulls all of his children into the front room, calls the guy that just threatened his life, puts him on speakerphone, lets this guy threaten the whole family again, and then basically laughs in his face and basically tells him, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm going to keep preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. I'm thinking, what more powerful, model for a father than to demonstrate courage and to laugh in the face of all these threats, even though the threats were certainly real. But it's basically like, what, are you just going to kill us? That's the worst you can do. We're going to live forever with Jesus. I mean, and you look at the fruit of his kids. We met two out of the four, 2 out of the 3 sons here at Living Stones. And these guys and their wives are firebrands. I mean, they just lay it out. They shoot straight. They don't care what people think. All they care about is that they preach the gospel faithfully. And I don't know about you, but we need that kind of bold wake-up call in America. And these are young people. They're in their late 20s. And so when you look at the anointing on their lives, and you look at the platform that God is building through their message, it's powerful. And I think, again, it's a challenge to our young adults. Hey, you're not too young to make an impact with your life. And so anyway, we hope to be partnering in the future a lot more with Turning Point USA, especially leaning into the Gen Z crowd. It was exciting. We just heard about the Purdue Northwest campus, so kudos to our young adults, our college students for leading the way there. So anyway, some really, really good things are happening. But last time we were on the podcast, when we recorded it was on a Monday, and then the election came the very next day. And so we received word that something historic had happened in New York City in electing a strange combination, the first Marxist Muslim mayor. All right, strange combination, and what we found from the postpartum, so to speak, of that election, when they analyzed who was responsible for this win, what groups came out, this is stunning to me. There was a group that called themselves the Hot Girls for Socialism. And you can find them on the X, on social media, all across social media, I guess. But they were wearing these shirts that said "Hot Girls from Mamdani." And one of the young ladies standing next to the mayor, she was wearing a blue shirt. She joked, "Sharia law starts now." Now, so this is a young, sophisticated, urban, 18 to 29-year-old who votes for this guy, first of all, who thinks it's cute that, it's hot girls from Mamdani, and then invokes excitement about Sharia law. Now, we heard about Sharia law last night. This girl has to have a frontal lobotomy or something. She's got nothing upstairs. She's not connected the dots as to what she is doing. And it's shocking to me, because listen to this data. Tell me what you think about this. According to one of the analyses, 84% of female voters, 84% between the ages of 18 and 29, backed him in his mayoral race. That's staggering numbers. What's your take on that? How come our young ladies today are so clueless as to, number one, the threat of Islam, number two, the economic devastation that happens because of Marxism, and number three, what Islamic men do to women who are hot women, so, by their own estimation?
Yeah, I think it doesn't surprise me, because you're assuming that people are being rational. people being rational. I don't think I'm assuming they're just jumping on the bandwagon because of a trend. What's trending? What's attractive? What's promising? I don't think they understand what Sharia law is. I don't think they've read Sharia law. I don't think they care to read what Sharia law is. I think the Marxism or socialism is what's probably more attractive to them. But again, that's our generation. Like, rarely do people ever read below the headline.
Yeah.
So,
and most of the time we've been taught, because this is a neo-Marxist trick, we divide everybody into classes. So, hey, we need to have the first female mayor. We need to have the first gay mayor. We need to have the first Marxist mayor, first Muslim mayor. There's almost this trendy thing like, let's find a new category to put in power, as if the category itself means you're going to have good leadership or good government. I mean, it's crazy, but that's how this generation has been trained. Also, it's interesting. One of the commentators was saying, women in particular, and this is a God-given fact, they're created to be maternal nurturers by virtue of the fact that they have a womb, and they're designed to conceive and to give birth to children. And so God has placed in women this inherent sense of maternal connection and compassion. And so what do the Marxists do? They come in and they stir that up in young ladies in terms of caring for the poor, caring for the needy. Of course, when we talk about caring for the poor and caring for the needy, they're not talking about they themselves caring for the poor and the needy. They're talking about stealing other people's money through taxation and having government care for the poor and the needy, which we know never works. But nevertheless, they were saying that this could have been part of the situation as well, and that we just have a lot of women who hear all this Marxist rhetoric and they're like, this guy's going to help all the poor people. Again, not connecting the dots in real life and what this really looks like. The other thing that I thought was very, very interesting, and this speaks to our Christian worldview, one commentator said the feminist movement promises women happiness and fulfillment if they go to an impressive college, which of course costs a lot of money and usually means a lot of school debt. They build a powerful career. They reject marriage, reject motherhood because kids are a burden and kids are a nuisance and kids are a hurdle to their career goals, and instead just use sex for pleasure. That's what's been fed a lot of these young women. And we know the reality of all this. Now they find themselves buried under student loan debt. They're unable to buy a home because of the sky-high cost of living in New York City. They're working a job that's not as fun or as fulfilling as they thought they might get. And most tragically, they're alone because they've rejected marriage. And many of them may never get married and may never have children and may never have the things that, from a biblical perspective, actually lead to the most meaning and the most satisfaction in life. And so when a Marxist comes along and talks about the promise of rent freezes and fare-free city buses and free, it sounds appealing to people who are probably kind of miserable with their current existence. And I think maybe that explains why, but shocking to me.
Well, look at revolution. The French Revolution, I mean, a lot of these color revolutions came from people just being really miserable. So they give up rationale, they'll give up stability for chaos. That's what causes those revolution. Right. And for a lot of these young people, they have no stakes. They can't buy a home. They don't own anything in New York City. They have a student debt they can't afford. They're working a job, and the harder they work, the more in debt they are.
Yep. So
in that situation, what do? You hope for a very, very disruptive candidate, and you're going to blame the rich. I mean, this is what happened in France, in French Revolution. It's the same idea over and over again.
Resentment and jealousy, you just keep stirring it up over and
blame
over.
The system,
again.
Blame the man. And again, I'm not saying the system is correct. I'm not saying the elite in New York are innocent of all this. But you just see the same pattern over and over again.
Yeah.
So.
And we can talk about capitalism gone bad, because certainly that's what happens when you find, billionaires who are in bed with oppressive regimes and regimes that stamp out free speech and all these kinds of things, and they're in there just for the money. There's been a lot of alliances with communist China in that regard. So again, we're not saying that the system it can be perverted, whether you're a capitalist or whether you're a Marxist. You can still pervert the system if Christ isn't in the middle of it. But I think people have this feeling where they're trapped, where they feel like they've not been able to get traction in life, where they feel just stuck, and they're at that point they're looking for the government to fix it. And as we know, again, government is really lousy. Usually government creates problems and then they promise to fix the problems, but they never do fix the problem. They just create more problems. And so it becomes really a downward cycle of perpetual misery whenever government gets involved to try to figure out how to make you happy or make you successful. That's the burden of freedom, I guess, is that we have to shoulder the responsibility ourselves and make a way and use the opportunity and use the freedom that we've been given to bring about change and prosperity. This was an interesting article I came across by a guy named Larry Horist. It's called Mamdani Wins, Everyone Else Loses. And I thought this was a really, really good take. First of all, he says the former New York governor, Andrew Cuomo, lost. And he says he lost more than an election. He's probably lost any chance of a future in politics. He had the COVID-19 scandals and nursing home deaths, and he had a sex scandal that caused him to have to resign. So this guy shouldn't be leading, and it's sad that he was perhaps the best option or realistic option that the Democrats could put forward, to resist a Marxist. But would you agree? I don't know that his political career has any life left in it.
No, I mean, Mamdani won by like 50%,
50.4.
Yeah, so you got to wonder if you had a better candidate besides those two, Curtis Silva and Cuomo. Would possibly Mamdani not have won? So we'll see.
So that's interesting too, because Curtis Silva, I think was his name. He was the Republican candidate, and they viewed him as a spoiler. So really, in some ways, he kind of paved the way for Mamdani's victory.
Well, I think last I checked, combining of Cuomo and Silva's vote together, they still couldn't overcome Mamdani. Okay. So, but you got to want again. A better Democrat candidate? I don't know. I mean, it's New York City. What am I going to say?
No, I get it, and it's a long shot for a Republican, obviously. Then you had New York's current mayor, Eric Adams, who lost. He was dealing with criminal accusations already, ethics complaints and so forth. But then the alliance with Trump made him, unelectable. So he dropped out.
And that alliance is simply not because he became a conservative. He's simply saying, hey, we need to kind of curb the illegal immigration in our city.
Yeah, so, I mean, it was actually kind of a rational stand that he made.
Yeah, why don't we protect our own citizens? So anyways,
This was interesting. Approximately half of the New York City voters lost because he won by just a smidgen, which means at least half the city wanted somebody else. This one is very, very painful. The Jews lost. In a city with a large Jewish population, the election of an anti-Semitic Muslim is a stunner.
Okay, hold up. But I read that tons of Jewish community came out and voted for him, Mamdani.
Which is equally schizophrenic.
So again, you get what you get, man. I don't know what to say.
No, I get it. This is interesting. Every citizen of New York City lost, even those who voted for Mamdani. If he's able to keep his radical campaign promises, the city's going to suffer, and so will all of its residents. And if he abandons his extreme socialist agenda, then those who supported him will feel betrayed. So it's a no-win situation for all the citizens. How about this one? The business and financial communities lost. His class warfare policies will undermine the private sector. They will find it necessary to shift some operations out of the Big Apple or abandon the city altogether. And of course, this includes the financial sector, of which New York City is known for worldwide. Lower Manhattan and Wall Street and all the financial sector, which, again, people, let's do a little veer off here and talk about that in particular. Because New York, of course, being the beating heart of global finance, the American financial engine is now experiencing a decentralizing, and this article says the establishment is nervous. Wall Street hasn't officially pulled the plug, but the undercurrent is clear. Capital does not thrive under confiscatory policies, endless compliance, or political hostility. And so what this man's arguing, and this is Derek Wolfe, he's arguing that the entire infrastructure as we know it, the financial frontier, is changing and shifting. And he gives a little bit of a proof here. This doesn't even include up to 2025 or post Mamdani. This is from 2020 to 2023. So in a 3-year span, more than 150 financial firms managing nearly $1 trillion fled New York. This isn't some fluke caused by COVID. It is a response to permanent shifts in policy, taxes, and culture. And of course, all of those major financial firms are landing in two places, both of which are conservative, both of which are red states, and both are which have government policy that is actually encouraging to the business sector. That's Texas and Florida. So this was interesting. Texas now leads in finance job growth, and it says here Florida is a close number 2. And he says Wall Street is not a street anymore. It's a floating abstraction, a moving target, a digital force. We have Wall Street South in Florida and Y'all Street in Texas. And he says that everything is changing, and a lot of it has to do with these terrible, terrible policies. I mean, people aren't stupid. If you have money and a lot of it, why are you going to stay in a place that has confiscatory policy? In other words, that policy that wants to confiscate, to steal, to take what's yours for the sole reason that you have more than the next person. What's your take on that?
They interviewed Ron DeSantis about the win of Democrats in New Jersey. I was surprised at how much Jack Cittadinelli, whatever his name is, lost by. Ron DeSantis said, I don't know how true this is, and maybe he's just trying to make a social media soundbite. He says he would have won if all the people who did not move to Florida from New Jersey had stayed in New Jersey. Wow. He would have won. In other words, the blue states are getting bluer and the red states are getting redder.
Yeah. So as we said, that, the left is trying to turn this out into some big seismic shift, some prophetic, forewarning of what's coming in the next election cycle. But these were deep, deep blue states. This was not like we lost significant ground, I don't think it represents a major shift in the voting populace.
I think there are a couple warnings. One is, can Republicans turn out when Trump's not on the ballot? Because we faced that same issue in the midterms in 2022. We have not had a strong Republican turnout since Trump is now on the ballot. So maybe, but seems like it's not. So we'll see. But
I think we have a deep bench of candidates, whereas the Democratic Party right now has a deep bench of radical socialists.
What are you talking about for president?
Yeah, I'm talking about for president.
Because I'm talking about midterms.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm talking about
I'm a little bit ahead of you.
Yeah, you're talking about, and maybe JD or who can turn that out. I'm just concerned about the midterms, keeping the Senate and the House. And I think that is an issue that Republicans should be concerned about.
And we talked about the way this election could actually have a positive impact on those who share our values. Maybe this is a big wake-up call leading up to midterm elections that, hey, we need to get involved.
Well, that's what a lot of people are saying is that it's a gift because it's kind of like a warning shot. The other issue is a lot of independents have felt like Trump has been so interested in international issues and less domestic issues. And even this weekend, Trump was tweeting out stuff about 50-year mortgage, talking about giving $2,000 as a dividend on stuff like that. On tariffs. He's talking about big meat and big insurance. So I think Trump is he's getting the message, and he does these little teas to see what the public take is. He kind of throws it out there and see what you guys think. So I think there is some legitimacy about domestic policies because Trump is starting to kind of dive into that. So that's kind of my take on that.
I want to talk about that a little bit later in the podcast because I think you bring up a really good point there. All right, we just talked about business and financial sectors that's losing. Also, the taxpayers lost because of this, because the tax burden on New Yorkers, which is already incredibly high, is going to increase significantly because of all these socialistic policies.
Well, he's trying to tax the billionaires and the millionaires, but if they're all moving, you're taxing like middle upper class people. Then
Well, and
basically.
then you're not only losing the billionaires and all their money, you're losing all the job creation, you're losing everything else that they do because no one wants to do business in your city or your state.
Yep.
The Democratic Party lost. This was interesting. Because of his extreme left-wing agenda, the Democratic Party is already divided. And his socialism is not going to so well fly over America like where we live. So, and I saw some of the Democrats are actually coming out. First of all, we saw many of them shift to get us out of this budget freeze. That was encouraging, but I think they're feeling a little bit of the heat depending on where they're coming from. And some of them are actually sounding somewhat sane. They're saying things like, we need to stop building our whole identity around hating Trump and actually come up with a plan. Like, what are we for? Who are we? What's our identity? But the problem is you're working with radicals and they are not, they're not submitting to common sense discussion, discourse. They're radicals. It's our way or no way. And I think they're in big trouble right now. I really do. So the Democratic Party lost. Chuck Schumer, Senate Minority Leader, is a loser big time. First of all, he was flip-flopping on the shutdown. He didn't endorse the party's nominee, which also said he wasn't willing to go that far left, but it makes him look weak and it makes him look vulnerable. And so his political career might be ending in 2027, as this guy suggests. So he loses. The people of America lose because now we have a radical left mayor ruling over New York's financial, the news, the entertainment industries, and that's all that's going to have a national ramification to it. This is sad. Prime Minister Netanyahu and the state of Israel are losers because of this man's strident anti-Israel positions, including his support for the boycott, disinvest, and sanction movement against Israel. He actually threatened Netanyahu to arrest him as a war criminal and may prevent Israel's head of state from even returning to the UN. So this is a massive blow to any kind of relations. Of course, not from the Trump administration, but it's a massive slap in the face to Israel and to Netanyahu. And then this is interesting. Last point. President Trump lost. He says there was a measurable anti-Trump vote. It was seen in the regions he won in 2024. And Republican candidates lost this year. The inroads that Trump made among blacks, Hispanics, and women all evaporated, at least temporarily. So interesting. I thought it was an interesting take on the whole thing. Now let's get into what was happening with this election strategy as it related to the shutdown and some of the strategies the Democrats made. This is by Victor Davis Hanson, whom we both enjoy. He is a regular writer, commentator, and he asked, does the Democratic chaos strategy work? His first point here, based on the midterms, I'm sorry, not the midterms, but the most recent elections, was number one, Democrats' chaotic nihilism still works. What they do is they create chaos. People don't like chaos. People blame who's ever in power for the chaos. And therefore, if we get who's ever in power out of office, we get rid of the chaos. And so that's a Marxist strategy. We talked about that.
Sounds familiar. 2020, summer of love, right before the 2020 election.
The summer of love. So, the Democrats don't have a problem with creating violence, as we talked about, chaos, and all of the above, but they do it intentionally. This was interesting. Point number 2, every day of Trump's first year, there were either campus eruptions, Tesla fire bombings, street violence against U.S. immigration and customs enforcement officers, or crazy district judges' injunctions. So ever since Trump came in office, he has had to fight all of this distraction to his agenda. And we could get into in depth all the federal court and judges that have been overstepping their constitutional bounds to try to stop Trump from simply executing his executive privileges according to the Constitution. And to have to deal with that every single day is again, it's just strategy. It's on purpose. And then we talk about the vitriol, the language, toning it down. Well, isn't it interesting? We have AOC, Jasmine Crockett, Eric Swalwell, the Squad, and the latest firecracker was thrown by a faltering Nancy Pelosi. Nancy shared this on CNN. Trump, quote, is just a vile creature, the worst thing on the face of the earth. How's that for toning down the rhetoric? We can't get rid of Nancy, by the way, fast enough. What an absolute corrupt waste she has been. My humble opinion.
She's not running again.
She's not running again. Thank God. But we've already had to deal with her nonsense for too long. This is interesting. He says, note, there has never been a positive Democrat contract with America since it's impossible to advance anything popular or moderate past its now firmly socialist base. So to my earlier point, they can't come up with a contract with America like Newt Gingrich and the Republicans did. Here's what we want to outline. Here's our policies. They don't have any policies. Their only policy is chaos and hatred. Point number 3, Democrats also use the chaos strategy to target key electoral groups. And this was very, very eye-opening to me. I guess because I'm just naive and I think, hey, we're going to have a fair election and people go out and vote for your candidate and then we'll go on with our business. But there was actually a political purpose to the pre-election shutdown. And it was designed to galvanize key constituencies to get out the vote in a low turnout year. They especially aimed at 2 groups, government workers and entitlement recipients. And so while everybody's going through pain, they didn't have to go through this pain, right? Because we could have passed this continuing resolution, 14 times? And so this was clearly a Democratic shutdown. The pain was caused by the Democrats, but while everything was shut down and while people's pain level is rising, they're using this as a political strategy to go out and go door to door and meet with all these people and again tell them, hey, this is the Republicans' problem and we just need to get rid of Trump and we need to elect our candidate. And they use this pain for their own political purposes, which again, I'm like, this is like communist strong arm stuff, It's just foreign to my mind. You're just naive. At least I am. I just think people will do what's right and we'll go vote. And if the wrong candidate wins in my mind, then okay, well we'll wait till the next election. But that's not how the leftists play. There's always a self-created chaotic mess that they then use for their own political agenda, which is, as you pointed out earlier, is all about power at the end of the day. And let's talk about some of the other things that you just talked about have been kind of pulling Trump down. They're good things, but they're bad because it's not getting enough traction out there. Number 1, 70 to 80% of deportations are targeted at those with either criminal records or prior deportation orders. That's not what's making the news. What's making the news, of course, is all these people that were working jobs and were serving and good citizens are being deported or whatever. That's not actually the case with 70 to 80% of these folks having criminal records. But that doesn't make the news cycle. And so we call ICE Gestapo, we call them Nazis, and this is the big lie that just keeps going over and over and over again. Much of Trump's agenda, other than the spectacular military recruitment and a secure border, is more long-term than instantly gratifying. And I think that's what you're talking about. He's out solving all kinds of global problems, but sometimes people go, what about us here at home?
So I heard an interesting analysis. I don't know how true this is. If you look at 2016, so Trump won the election in 2016. So 2017, 2018 was first 2 years as a president. In 2017, the economy was going, the market was flying, everyone was happy. He focused on domestic policy. In 2018 is when the terrorists came, the shutdown, all this different, impeachment, blah, 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 and he got destroyed in the midterms. This analysis says he's flipping it this year. So the first year, he's going to get all the disruption, all the colonoscopy, the tariffs,
yep.
the shutdown battles, the all this stuff out. And then 2020, so that's 2025 and 2026, which is midterm year. He's going to focus on domestic issue, and he's going to let people be very happy, blah, blah, blah. So going to 2026. Now, I don't know how true that is. I don't remember 2017 and 2018, but that seems to make sense. And maybe that's his plan, because I hear about all these $1 trillion investment from all these firms in Japan, all these different countries. Yeah. But those money, even the big, beautiful bill, a lot of the economic policies doesn't kick in until 2026. You won't see your tax benefits until 2026. So we'll see what happens. Jury's still out, but I feel like Trump is pivoting to domestic.
Well, you talked about the tariff reset, which has been spectacularly successful. It's caused initial disruption.
A lot of disruption, yeah.
But what's come out of that is going to be amazingly good for all Americans. The deportations, he points out here, take time to switch, get Americans back into those jobs that were held by illegals. We've got new gas, oil, and nuclear energy production, trimming the federal workplace, deregulation, green lighting AI, and other new technologies, all of which none of those things have an immediate impact, but they're all great for the U.S. economy. So anyway, a good point. Number 5 here, he says, and we can close with this, there's no longer a Democratic Party. It's now an unapologetically neo-socialist Jacobin movement. He gives some examples here. Threaten a political opponent with assassination, brag about killing his kids, tattoo the 3rd Panzer SS Division Death's Head insignia on your chest, promise to arrest a foreign head of state when he visits your city, boast about grabbing the means of production. Hansen says, so what? To the new left, this is just proof that their new candidates and voters mean business. They cannot be shamed, not even by mocking Charlie Kirk's wound or hoping Trump is not so lucky a 3rd time. He says there's plenty of time for Republicans to digest these results, especially the strategy and the dangerous nature of the new left, along with the mercurial moods of swing voters and the need to stick to the economy. He says, but the clock is ticking. Yep. So I thought that was a really good analysis of what's going on right now and the new brave world in which we find ourselves. And if there's anything, just to summarize, if there's anything that I took as a takeaway from the Christ and Culture event that we hosted last night, and I've heard this over and over again from Turning Point and from Charlie before he was murdered, that it is time to get involved, to get engaged. And that's what we are absolutely committed to here at Living Stones, getting involved, getting people elected, not only politically, getting involved in every sphere of society because Jesus Christ is Lord, and realizing that the mess that we're in is largely because the church has retreated. And it's no longer time for retreat. It is time for bold, aggressive, courageous leadership, starting with men in the home and spilling out into the marketplace and to every one of the major influencing areas of our culture. So to that end, lots of good things going on. Still lots of challenges. We'll roll up our sleeves and hopefully go put a stocking cap on and a winter coat on after we leave this studio. Hey, Matthew, we got to figure out how to heat this place. It's freezing in here. All right. But hey, that's our problem, not your problem. And you got enough problems. So we'll see you next week. We'll look forward to our time together next Thursday.